So, third year of sustainability, we get to choose a project in the field of sustainability, which could be anything we want, as long as it's focused on an environmental aspect, a social, or an economical. Hopefully it would be all three. And me and three friends got together and we started doing our research and figuring out what we wanted to do our project on. And this presentation also shows a little bit of our research and also the course we decided to take after learning what challenges we face as a human society. So, and also how we formed our startup. And this is our presentation, and we'll start with the humans. So by the year 2050, we're expected to grow from 7 billion people to 9 billion people, which means we're going to need to feed another 2 billion people. If you think about that, that's double the size of India's population right now, which is a lot of mouths to feed. Now on top of that, 80% of the population is going to be living in cities. So that's a lot of people. If 80% of the people are living in the cities, that means that only 20% can be potential farmers out in the farms, and we know right now that it's less and less. And in the US right now, the average age of farmers is around 70 years old, and only about 2% of the population is farming. Now, food prices in cities are expected to double by the year of 2050 because of the demand, and that's fresh food, produce. And all the supply chains are going to need to be met. You know, we're going to need to increase our supply in order to meet the demands of 2050. Now, when we pay for our food, what we're paying for is the land use and the water usage. And also we pay for the transportation of the food, as well as the supply chain, which obviously goes through a lot of hands along the way. The increase in the price of food is going to put a lot of populations at a nutritional security threat. So let's talk a little bit about agriculture, because that's what we're here for, and that's what we focus on in AgroFuture. So currently, agriculture uses up 70% of all the fresh water on the planet. Fresh water is only 3% of the water that we have on the planet, and 70% of that goes directly to agriculture. On top of that, we're using 35% of all land in order to grow our crops, and every single day, more and more forests and more rainforests are being cut down in order to grow crops for either ethanol or food production, and the land use change is only increasing. Now, in order for the food supply to meet the demand by 2050, we're going to need an additional 10 million square kilometers of land to grow the crops that we need to feed the population, which means we're going to need an additional land the size of Brazil, land we don't have, or Europe, since we are in Europe. Now, as these fields get bigger and bigger, they also get farther and farther from our plates, which means that we need to transport them either via planes, trucks, boats, cars, vehicles. By the time the food reaches us, it's already gone through several hands, it's already gone through cooling several times also, which means that it doesn't reach us when it's super fresh. As a result, along the way, a third of the food that we grow is being thrown out into the garbage before it even reaches our plates. So we're growing 100% of the food, 33 of it goes directly into the garbage to create methane and harmful gases before it even reaches our plates. Now, in order for the current agricultural system to grow what it's growing, a lot of produce, we use intense chemicals such as pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Harmful chemicals which end up in our drinking water, in our reservoirs, animals, and most importantly in our bodies, and we don't know what the result of that is. Studies haven't been so conclusive of that. So if we sum up agricultural's impact, environmental impact on the planet, we are feeding more people than ever before, but at the same time we're polluting the earth more than ever before. 30% of all greenhouse gases are emitted from agriculture. So if you take all the cars, trucks, planes, boats, every single day driving on the roads, flying in the air, agriculture's carbon footprint is still bigger than all those together. So that's a serious impact. So let's see what we have. Currently, our bag of produce isn't cheap, contains harmful chemicals. On the way, a third of it gets thrown out, and because it has a short shelf life, most of it will get thrown out in our houses as well. So how do we feed our planet in a sustainable manner? How do we maintain nutritional security for large populations? How do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions? How do we feed people in a healthy manner without using intense chemicals and pesticides? And how do we stop damaging the environment as we are now? All these questions have led us here to Expo 2015, how to feed the population in a sustainable manner. So one of the ideas and one of the main trends in the current literature and around the world is the localization of food and the commercial use of urban agriculture. Urban agriculture completely eliminates the need of transportation, and it reduces the number of hands in the supply chain, which means that the produce will be less expensive. Now, this is New York City, for example. No one's going to want to be getting rid of Central Park in order to start growing crops on it, right? The problem is, though, that land is becoming more and more expensive in the cities, and it's becoming less and less available as well at the same time. This isn't real, but it will be soon. So, certain technologies, detached bed soils, like Eyal had mentioned, have been designed, which allow us to grow large amounts of produce within the city and within the city limits. The detached soil beds can be grown either on walls or on rooftops, like you see outside in the Israeli pavilion, excuse me. So what we've done is we've been able to move agriculture into the city, but there's a few other problems. We still need to maximize the amount of food that we produce per square meter, as well as weight constraints on the buildings, and we still need a lot of water in order to meet agriculture's requirements to grow the produce. So for that, hydroponic technologies have been created, like was mentioned earlier. Hydroponics allow us to grow a maximum amount of food with minimal resources. What we have is a censored and computerized system where the plants pretty much talk to the computers. The sensors know exactly how much nutrients the plants need, when they need it, and how much is required. By using hydroponic systems, it's a closed-loop system, which means we are able to use up only 10% of the water current agriculture uses and grow more produce per square meter. 90% of that water can be saved, which means that we don't have to build more desalination plants, and we don't have to divert streams, rivers, or lakes in order to send that water off into the farms, into the crops. Now, the produce which we're growing, using hydroponics, we're able to grow up to 50 times more produce per square meter, which means that if you have a 100 square meter plot of land, you can grow up to the equivalent of 5,000 square meters, which is a lot of produce. Also, studies have shown that the quality of the produce is one of the highest ones in the world. Without the use of the herbicides, the chemicals, and the fungicides, we're still able to deliver fresh produce at an incredible quality, and we can grow it 3 times faster. So, certain technologies have been developed in order to implement greenhouses on buildings and on rooftops. These greenhouses can grow year-round. They're controlled climate. And also, they meet standard regulation and building codes as well. Also, this is going to be the future soon. So, what's amazing about these greenhouses is that, first of all, they keep out pests. So we don't need to use these fungicides and pesticides because you have a barrier between the outside world and the greenhouses. But on top of that, they're situated 17 meters, excuse me, not 17 meters, but above ground, which means that you can grow, and pests usually fly about 1 meter to 2 meters above the ground, usually with the wind. Over here, if they're situated above the buildings, they won't be able to fly up there. Also, using these greenhouses, we create thermal insulation for the buildings, which means that the residents in this building, the top floor, will need to pay less for electricity, for cooling, or for heating. Their summers will be cooler, their winters will be warmer thanks to these greenhouses. Also, what we're doing is reducing the urban heat island effect. So as temperatures continue to rise within the cities, by introducing more and more crops and more plants, we'll be able to reduce the temperatures within the city. Lastly, by creating and implementing these greenhouses on buildings, we're creating new real estate value, not just for the building, but for the entire neighborhood altogether. So take, for example, Whole Foods Market, which partnered with Gotham Greens. This is in Brooklyn, New York. Gotham Greens built a 20,000 square foot greenhouse above the supermarket. The produce is distributed not just at the local Whole Foods, but also elsewhere around the neighborhood and around New York City. This is what it looks like on the inside. It's quite amazing. They grow 200 tons of leafy greens and tomatoes a year. And they're very successful. They're opening up their 4th one right now in Chicago, which is going to be the largest urban greenhouse in the world. So this is the idea of the perfect city. This is Paris.
Yeah.
A lot of cities want to get there, but there's a long way to get there. So what we're trying to do, and what cities are trying to do, is they're trying to become more sustainable and more resilient. They're becoming more independent. They want to provide for their citizens in a local manner, in a sustainable manner. And they want to bring less produce and less stuff from inside the city, and take less outside of the city, which is mostly waste. So the technologies that I mentioned, the hydroponics systems and greenhouses, will allow us to do just that. They'll turn cities from consumer-based into producer-based cities. And by implementing these technologies in cities, we'll be able to change the landscape of the cities, the architecture of the cities. We'll be able to change the agricultural city, and we'll be able to secure nutritional and food security for the citizens and the residents of the cities. So over the past 10 years, just about, a lot of cities have been starting to implement regulations and codes in order to get to that previous amazing city. So Toronto was the first city in 2009 to enact a law mandating all buildings above 2,000 square meters to implement green roofs on their buildings. Now, not only that did it mandate them, but it also granted every single entrepreneur which had a green roof a subsidy of $75 per square meter, with grants of up to $100,000. So it actually gave them an incentive to turn their buildings into green cities. And like Toronto, we can see many more cities which have followed in suit. Recently, France just enacted a law mandating all buildings have either solar panels or green roofs on their buildings. So the trend is only going to continue. So this is Tel Aviv. No green whatsoever, as you can see. But what's interesting about Israel is that we are pretty much a microcosm of future predictions. 92% of our population already lives within the city limits. And on top of that, since our founding, we've been dealing with water shortages, lack of water, lack of natural resources, and lack of arable land. The city of Kfar Saba last year, 2014, enacted a law mandating all new buildings implement green roofs or solar panels on the new buildings. Not on the old ones, but on the new ones that are being formed. So in terms of urban agriculture in Israel today, it's mostly in the form of community gardens, where the focus is mostly on the social aspect rather than on the mass production of food. Now it's nice because it does allow the community gardeners a chance to get together, interact, and grow some fresh produce, but it doesn't provide us with a real solution of growing many crops within the city. There is the one farmer in Israel, one industrial farmer, we could call him, because he's located in an industrial zone. This is 17 meters above ground in an industrial zone just outside of Jerusalem. The farmer is able to grow 3 million crops a year on 4,500 square meters. The produce which he grows is sold to wholesalers and to local supermarkets as well. Also what we have is one demonstrational farm, which is above a mall in Tel Aviv, called the Dizengoff Center. But it's mainly for demonstration. It shows people how they can grow their own produce within the city, whether it's small systems or large systems. And you can see the roots, the color of the roots, super healthy, white. Okay, so the produce is excellent produce. People come here, they learn a little bit about how to grow it, they take what they learn, and they continue on. This is what it looks like also. The produce which is grown for demonstrational purposes is then sold to the restaurants below the mall. So me and my 3 friends, after learning about all these trends in the world, after seeing how Israel is really what the future is going to look like for the entire population of the world, we decided we wanted to become urban farmers, but we decided we wanted to take it to a whole nother level. And we realized that it was very, very environmental. It was very, very for the environment. It was very social because we'd be able to reduce the costs and the transportation of all the produce. But we weren't so sure about the third element of the sustainability, the triple bottom line, which is the economic side of things. So we continued to read up, and we realized that the current literature says that in order for a greenhouse to be financially stable, it has to be above 1,000 square meters. Now, the problem with 1,000 square meter buildings is that they're usually located outside of the city, either in industrial zones or even farther away. And areas like that aren't exposed to large amounts of people. So they don't really get the point done. And also you're limited to just this area, these 1,000 square meters. So we started thinking and doing a little bit more analysis. And we realized, what if we didn't just have 1,000 square meter, a building of 1,000 square meters? What if we, in aggregate, gathered up more than just 1,000 square meters? What if we gathered up a lot of buildings and in total made up a net of more than just 1,000 square meters? We weren't limited to just one building. We could get more and more and more buildings, more and more land, more and more buildings, more and more crops. More and more buildings meant more and more exposure to the people. More exposure to the people meant more awareness, and so forth and so on. And that's exactly what we did. That's what AgroFuture did. We partnered up with financial advisors and experts in the field, and we realized just that we can create a network of urban farms controlled by one operating system, which would be financially stable, it would be environmental, and it would be social. So the concept is really quite simple. Farm to table. Every night, the consumers can go into a website or into an application, order the produce online. They can choose from a variety of vegetables and leafy greens. They can order what they want. Within 24 hours, it'll be delivered by bicycle deliverymen. The following morning, after the order is placed, the farmers cut it, put it in a basket, send it off via bicycle directly to the customer's door. So it's not really farm to table, it's rooftop farm to table. As for the quality of the produce, like I said, we don't rely heavily on pesticides or fungicides or herbicides. So the customer enjoys fresh produce with longer shelf life, which was picked the exact same day. So you won't have to throw out a lot of so-called garbage, and he'll enjoy high quality premium produce. Now, in terms of local employment, if you think of how many people are involved in such a project, you have, on the technical side of things, in order to build a greenhouse on a roof, you need an architect, you need an engineer. In order to grow the crops, you need an agronomist and you need a farmer. In order to distribute it, you need distributors and you need marketing. So there's a lot of people involved. So you're going to be boosting the local economy. Now, studies have shown for every dollar spent locally, another 6 more is produced. So we're going to be stimulating the local economy in ways that haven't been done before. In terms of education and impacting education, we can reconnect kids and students within the neighborhood to agriculture once again. We can teach them of the importance of nutrition and how to grow their own food within their household. Lastly, what we can do is we can partner up with academia and see how these greenhouses affected the neighborhood, how they've changed people's awareness to food in general, how it's impacted obesity and malnutrition within the city. Lastly, ecotourism. The moment you create a neighborhood which produces its own food, people will become interested. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner. He says, if you build it, he will come. So if you build it, he will come. If we build it, they will come. People will come because they'll be interested not in just hearing about this project, not just seeing it online, not just reading up about it. People will physically want to see how it's possible to create a network of greenhouses and have it be financially stable, social, and environmental, how it affects the population as a whole. So this is our vision of the future city. This is AgroFuture. Now, Israel has been a leader in agriculture since its founding in 1948. We've turned arable deserts into blossoming fields. We've grown crops, rainforest crops in the middle of the desert. So we have the technology, we have the know-how, and the people to do it. We've put together those people in a team of AgroFuture, and we truly believe that the rooftops of today are the fields of tomorrow. Thank you.